Cheers.
Hello guys, good evening SCC and hello world. My name is Adrian Tampolino and I'm zooming in from Singapore and we are broadcasting live from Manila, Philippines. And of course, welcome to the SCC Online Sessions presents Arkihustle. Yan. And of course, online with me and co-hosting with me tonight is architect Archie Tolentino.
Archie,
yan. Nakalimutan ko. Thank you pala, Boysen, the number one paint.
Every day. Boysen!
Boysen, maraming salamat. The number one paint, of course. Crown Pipes. Hello, Sir Rodel. Di kita makakalimutan. Nag-hello ka ni.
Ang ating
persistent viewer. Na-miss ko to. Ang tagal ng holiday break natin.
Na-miss mo na?
Ang tagal ng season, ng season break. Ganyan.
Oo nga eh. Actually, totoo lang. Yung regular week, every week pa tayo nun eh, di ba?
Every week.
Every week meron tayong show. Pero ngayon medyo slow down tayo ng konti kasi medyo bumibigat yung guest natin eh.
Yeah, tsaka medyo bumibigat na responsibility kasi medyo tumutuloy na rin ang mga businesses across the globe. Yan.
Tama.
Yes.
Less
of
ng
course, ayun na nga.
Downtime.
From one holiday, just mag-holiday na naman kami dito. So, I don't know what's gonna
Next
happen.
Week?
Yes, of course. 1 week.
Wow! Sarap. O mag-1 week ka bang show?
Hindi, grabe. Wala akong mapoproduce na show noon.
Mapoproduce na show. Pero yun, sabi nga ni Tams, sa mga bagong balik sa panonood sa ating STC online sessions, itong Arkihustle is a special series, coined by our IPP, Benson Victores. Para dito natin malalaman yung, yung hustle, from the title itself, yung hustle, which is what yung, nangyari
what do you do?
Yan. What do you do? How did you do this? How did you achieve?
How do you do this? What you achieve wherever you are? Ganyan. So, mag-share yung mga guests natin starting ilan yung last? 2 weeks ago, right? Yeah, like last 2 weeks ago. It's
si
architect Randel.
Oh,
architect Randel.
Kwento niya nung from being an in-house architect, tapos naging design and builder na siya.
Yes.
So medyo yung kinuwento niya yung buhay, parang buhay kung paano gagawin. Yan. As part of our January GMM session, parang design and build tayo pag January, di ba?
Yes. So ngayon naman, start tayo ng mga series ng mga architects natin abroad. At syempre, accidental na naman itong nangyari. Nagulat talaga din ako nung nag-send ng CV. Friend, hindi ko naman inakalang ganun. Yeah, so we are going to start dito sa second home base ko sa Singapore. So we have a very special guest for tonight from Singapore. Yes, and hindi basta-basta ang guest for tonight, actually. Hindi basta-basta. Yes. Grabe. So, ayun. Okay, so bumati muna tayo bago ang lahat.
Sino mga online dyan?
Of course, our chapter president, architect Bon Stararemo.
Yun, Bon.
Mga nanonood ng dalawang show tong mga to eh.
Namamangka sa dalawang programa.
Oo, namamangka sa dalawang programa. Good evening, Sir Jerds. Of course, Sir Rodel.
Yeah.
Edel.
Yeah.
Salamat na daw. Thank you din po. Yeah. Hello, Krishna. Good evening. Ayan.
Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, ilan na bang viewers natin? Basta marami tayong viewers, millions kagad eh, nakita ko.
Hindi naman, mga 13,000 pa lang. 13,000 pa lang.
Okay.
Simula pa lang eh. Mamaya magiging million yan. May million.
Okay. O yan. So, pakilala na natin yung tag dito?
Hatak mo yan eh.
Okay, guys, our guest for tonight, is a Filipino architect and a director at 8 Inc. Singapore, leading the environments team in creating meaningful human experiences through a holistic approach. As a design and program lead, he provides creative direction, leads concept ideation, design strategies, and detailed construction methodologies for the studio's multidisciplinary projects across the region. Also, he manages project implementation and staffing. Baka naman makapag-submit ganyan staffing and staffing resources between other 8 Inc. global offices. His projects across Asia Pacific region lang naman, di ba?
Yan.
Turkey and Dubai
Ay.
have spanned different industries ranging from finance and telecommunications to hospitality, retail, and real estate. Key projects in Singapore and Asia Pacific region includes Shimano Cycling World, yung shinare mo, Shimano
Sarap
Cycling
mag-bike.
World Singapore Sports Hub, OUE Restore at Downtown Gallery, yun yung Olasia rin ata na building.
Hindi ko alam yun.
Changi Pressing Innovation Hub Master Plan, Globe Gen 3 retail program and iconic flagship in the Philippines, United Overseas Bank flagship in China, and a 200-key hotel and office development in Melbourne, Australia. Beyond the region, our guest also collaborates with other 8 Inc. studios, designing unique experiences for clients, including Akbank TAS in Turkey and Majid Al Futaim in Dubai. Prior joining 8 Inc., he worked on private residential projects and corporate interior fit-outs and offices in Singapore and in the Philippines. He got his Bachelor's of Science in Architecture degree from the Mapua Institute of Technology, now Mapua University, and obtained his architecture license in 2011. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on-screen architect, of course, our first UAP Tatak World-Class Architect for this year, Architect Jenry Bonifacio Umali, UAP. Woo! Welcome to the show, Jenry. Hello.
Hi.
Good evening.
Sorry, first of all, may week muna ako. Nainggit ako 1 week Chinese New Year off. 1 week kayong off?
1 week na. 1 week yung off namin. Wala kayong off, no?
Meron naman, pero 2 days lang. Not
ganun.
Yeah.
Yun. So, yun nga. Ayun nga, Jenry. So, may i-greet ka ba? Shinare mo ba to? Ganyan.
Hindi. Tanungan ng link, pero hindi ko binigay.
Tanong ng link. Ayan. So, yeah. So, start tayo from your life in Singapore. So, after boards mo sa Pilipinas, did you fly directly to Singapore?
No, not really. Actually, nandito na ako before board. So, alam mo na, actually, hindi pa ata pwede sabihin natin, baka mamaya may magsumbong. Diba? Kasi right after graduation, I think nagtrabaho lang sa Pinas for 8 months and then I flew into Singapore. And then, alam mo na yung nag-book stuff. So, after nun, diba? So, sa ako umuwi, then nag-boards and then nag-stay ako for, I think, a year. So, may tinulungan akong friend na mag-set up ng office and then after that, I left back to Singapore. So, yun. So that was 2012, I think, yeah.
2012. And then how long have you been here? 2012. And then in 8 Inc., you have been since
2013.
2013. And then based din sa CV mo, sa shinare mo sa amin, talagang you hustled your way up talaga from junior pa nga yung nakita ko eh.
Junior designer.
From junior designer until you become a director for environments. How is it? Anong feeling nung ganong kabigat? Mabigat eh. Hello, ako.
Actually, parang nga lang yun eh. Siguro it was a perfect parang context. Kasi during that time, yung Singapore office kasi namin started 2010, I think. So my boss flew in 2 of his directors from San Francisco. Then sila yung nag-set up ng office. And then I was part of that first batch of designers na na-hire. So parang in a way, parang medyo OG, ganun. So there was a time na parang yung mga leads gusto na nilang bumalik ng SF. So of course, succession plan. So medyo parang siguro kataon lang na pumasok ako on a very perfect timing din in a way. So syempre, walang boss, syempre, di ba alam mo na.
So talagang kumbaga incubation office mo rin talaga siya. until ito na.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. And then eventually, as we started filling in the position kasi yung mga juniors during that time, kasi ang strategy kasi ng boss ko, he would train his staff sa Singapore kasi he moved from San Francisco to Singapore then. He would train people sa Singapore, then he would disperse them out. So yung Hong Kong office namin, yung director doon galing din sa Singapore. So she's a close friend of mine. And then yung principal sa Dubai also came from Singapore. So parang ginagawa niya training ground. Unfortunately, ako naiwan ako dito sa SG, pero it's something na parang preference ko rin. Kasi sabi ko sa kanya before, I'm not interested in relocating sa mas malayo pa. So,
akala ko ayaw mo sa Singapore.
No, hindi naman.
And then, ayun nga, coming from sa perspective mo, how is it working? Siyempre ako, like 2 years pa lang naman dito. And then, may iba kasi nagtatanong usually sa akin nasa Pinas, anong feeling ng working sa isang malaking firm sa ibang bansa? Kasi pag tinatanong nila ako lang naman designer, hello, anong isa-share ko sa inyo?
Well, actually, I think hindi siya ganun kalaki, at least sa Singapore. Kasi ang biggest size namin was 25. Ngayon, medyo maraming mali sa amin recently. Yan, sinasabi ko na sa'yo.
Sinasabi ko sa'yo, madali ka lang email.
Pero I think ang isa sa challenge would be, of course, parang may ikipag-compete ka talaga sa global talent eh. Kasi during that time, yung mga hinahire nila was either coming from SF, London, pinadala pa nila to Singapore. Siyempre, ano ba naman yung degree ko, mapuwa, tapos tatapat mo sa Pratt Institute, sa SciArt, di ba? So, siyempre, merong feeling na parang you can't compete with them. Pero, I think one good characteristic ng culture namin sa office is that they don't look kung anong nationality mo. Kasi di ba yung ibang offices kasi kapag hindi maganda yung degree mo, I mean, hindi maganda, pero parang they don't think na it's par with other universities globally, then they would think na hindi ka rin capable. So, ayun. So, yun yung medyo, number one struggle ko nun was about, probably paano ko maintain na yung, kumbaga sa mindset na kaya ko silang, sabayan kahit na yung degree ko is, Manila degree or something. So, yeah.
So, okay. So, let's go to with our wide range of portfolio, talagang nag-e-enjoy ka sa retail design?
In a way, I would say a combination. Kasi hindi lang naman siya about retail eh. Kumbaga kasi sa 18 kasi, nagkataon lang na ang classification mo kapag non-residential usually would fall under commercial or retail. Pero yung retail na yun kasi, it would include, parang syempre obviously nandun yung mga stores, nandun yung mga telco, and then at the same time, meron din mga banks, meron ding hospitality. Pero yes, I would say the majority would be retail, would be retail design. But nonetheless, we would do the same approach regardless kung anong project namin. So, mamaya, I think as part of the presentation, mamaya, i-explain ko rin in a bit kung paano yung approach ni 8 pagdating sa projects na applicable din sa lahat ng format or types of projects.
Okay. So, sige, I can give you, the screen is all yours. Okay, you can share now your screen. Archie, you can share now the screen to our...
Okay. All good. Medyo parang may lag lang ata kay Adrian or sa side door or something.
Okay.
Good.
Ayun. Oh, okay, sige, go. Okay, so retail design. So basically, retail design in a nutshell, it's about designing spaces that are meant to sell or showcase or basically present products and services from a specific brand or merchant. So traditionally, pag sinabi mo kasing retail design, you would think of, for example, Apple Store, you would think of basically products na naka-display sa shelves, fixtures, product presentation and stuff. But then eventually, nung natutunan ko siya from 8 din, na parang before you actually jump into that process, there is still a lot of things that you need to figure out from the beginning. So I think yun yung medyo parang edits ko for tonight. Instead of focusing on retail design, I think I would also talk about how you actually design a proper retail experience, which is completely different from just a retail design. Okay, so having said that, so from retail design, we would then focus on retail experience. First of all, we need to define what experience is. So experience kasi can be defined in multiple ways. So it could involve literally a physical experience, an emotional, or perhaps even mental and psychological. But then, just to simply define what an experience is, it's about our emotions and how do we feel on a certain event or a certain thing that happened at any given time. Di ba kaya nga usually mga tanong sa atin is ano yung quote and quote the best experience or worst experience. Kasi it's something that would stick to our emotions and to our brains for the longest period of time. So hence, yung naging focus namin sa work is about experiential design, and then how do we apply that in terms of the retail programs, financial services, and then at the same time, even as small as a residential project. And then of course, we all know that experience is holistic. So hindi lang siya about you enter a space and then magagandaan ka sa space. So eventually, it's not just about ano yung itsura ng space. So it also involves multiple realms. So I think specifically for experience design, you would look at obviously the physical, the visual, and even behavioral. So for example, papasok ka sa isang retail space, maganda nga interior niya, pero yung staff niya is hindi naman friendly. So parang in a way, medyo negative experience din yun sa users mo. And then I think to best explain the strategic experience design, we would always put the customer in the center, and then we should take note that these customers are also people with emotions and specific needs. Then you would have your, what we call it, the four experience realms. So around these four experience realms would be your brand values. So anong relevance ng diagram? So basically, this shows how the human experience, for example, the people in the middle, can be influenced by this realm. So in strategic design, we've identified environments, behaviors, communications, products, and services. So specifically in a retail point of view, it's very important not just to focus on the physical space, but then we also need to make sure that we're catering for the other realms as well. So for example, architecture falls under environment. So this would include the interior design, the spatial design. Specifically for retail, it would include visual merchandising. If you have pop-up design sa ibang location. So those things would fall under the environments or physical space. And then at the same time, you have the communications, which is, it's not literally like telco communication, but it's about your brand identity. It's about your physical branding and collaterals. Pagdating sa retail design, syempre kasama din dyan yung packaging, yung mga digital touchpoints mo if meron ka sa space mo to support the experience. And then usually sa restaurant, you would include uniform and then as well as the tone of voice. So tone of voice is like, paano ka magi-interact with your customers. Ano ka ba, friendly ka ba, or medyo formal, or medyo laid back, or something like that. And then yung third realm, which is I think relative dun sa mismong customer mo itself, would be, dun sa mismong client mo, would be the products and services. So usually, of course, obviously retail projects would have their own sets of products and services. That's quite unique to them. So how do you take those products and actually present it in such a way that it would be differentiated from the competition? And then lastly, I think ito yung always now overlooked natin when it comes to experience design is about the people, or we call it behavior. So it talks about the staff, the culture of the staff. And when we say culture, it's not just about the external culture, but it should also include the internal. So syempre, you need to walk the talk, diba? Hindi naman pwede na parang on the facade, you're like a very, what they call this, friendly and company, but then in the inside, parang hindi mo inaalagaan yung tao mo or something like that. And then we're also defining the roles and responsibilities of each of the staff. And then if needed, we would also come up with a behavior model to actually tie up everything that has to do with the staffing and and basically the people. Now, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Simon Sinek, but then he actually wrote this book about, like starting with why. So basically, ito yung pinaka-core ideology ng 8 Inc. or I think also other experiential design firms. should always know why you exist, what's your relevance, and why are you differentiated. So basically kasi, di ba, specifically in retail, you have a sea of options eh. So, paano ka magsa-stand out doon? Paano mo mapifeel doon mapapafeel doon sa tao na you're different and you're differentiated from the rest of the competition? So ultimately, you need to always start with the human outcomes. So what are human outcomes? So for example, if I'm your customer, ano yung gusto mong ma-feel ko when I enter your space or if I interact with your brand? Hindi ka agad-agad mag-jump into tactics like, kailangan ko ng magandang space if hindi naman siya relevant dun sa outcome na gusto mong i-achieve. So first and foremost, again, you need to identify what is your why and why you exist. And then next, after defining that why, you kind of like need to figure out what's your strategy. So dito na papasok yung how. Kumbaga, meron ka ng idea kung ano yung gusto mong ma-achieve both sa company and sa customers mo. Now, paano mo siya i-implement? So you need to come up with a strategy. So ito na yung tangible action points that would later on guide your tactics. So basically, if you imagine like an urban master plan wherein you have the roads, you have the zoning, you have the utilities. So it's similarly, on an experience strategy, you need to come up with those things that you would later on use to guide your principles when it comes to designing the space, designing the touch points, and designing the communications aspect of the project. And then lastly, tactics. So ito yung I think everyone would be very, very familiar with this. So in architecture and design, and this I don't mean this in any offensive way. We would always, for example, may brief tayo, we would always jump into the drawing board and sketch something. But then we would always tend to forget na we need to come up with a strategy kung ano yung gusto nating ma-achieve. So basically parang bago ka mag-design, you need to understand your why. Bakit, ano yung pangailangan ng customers mo, ano yung strategy mo to achieve that. And most of the time as well, kapag nag-design na tayo, saka tayo nag-rationalize kung ano yung concept namin. I mean not everyone, but some of us, I mean myself included, before learning this in a more in-depth way, would sometimes come up with the rationale later on, which is I think quite problematic, especially if you're designing for retail spaces. Kasi take note, retail spaces would involve investment from your client. It would involve expensive builds. It would involve expensive specifications and equipment. So kung hindi siya relevant sa experience na gusto mong mangyari, so medyo magiging either gimmicky siya or hindi siya relevant dun sa outcomes mo. And then irrational loyalty. So to us, this is what we call one of the holy grails of a successful retail design. Why? Kasi take note, kapag you're into so much, like loyalty dun sa brand, it doesn't matter kung saan sila magkamali. Parang okay lang sa'yo kasi loyal ka sa kanya. So for example, Apple last few months, they've introduced iPhone 12 without the charger. Siyempre, lahat ng Apple fans sasabihin, anti-environmental friendly, ganyan-ganyan. But then, tawag dito, on a functional perspective, you kind of like need a charger, di ba? So, siyempre, yung iba okay lang. Pero imagine if Samsung would do that. Imagine if Oppo would do that. Or imagine if Vivo would do that. Siyempre, ibang tao, iba yung sasabihin. But then, because it's Apple, they could get away with it. So, yun yung parang perfect example ng kahit na small mistakes, big or even big mistakes, they would likely to just get away with it. Kasi nga, meron silang, kumbaga parang cult or irrational loyalty. Kasi we all know that Apple experience is one of the best experience, be it in retail or be it in their ecosystem. And then I think next would be a typical creative process that normally me and my team would normally implement in our projects. So typically as architects, again, as mentioned earlier, we would jump into immediately sa concept design. Pero one key important thing to find out more about your project and the brief is always start with immersion and creative workshop. So basically, immersion involves getting more yourself familiar with the brand, with your customers, with the competitors, and with the retail trends. And then this knowledge would then be tested in a workshop with the stakeholders. Kung ano man yung magiging output nun, that would define your experience blueprint, which would then define the execution of the project moving forward. So I think anyway, these are just examples of how a team conducts their workshop. So it's either through desk research, Sometimes we would even go as far as, doing stakeholder interviews, like each of the individual C-level personnel and even the managers. And then depending on the extent of the transformation, we would also talk to even to the staff on the ground. And then we would conduct workshops, and then ultimately the outcome of that would be an experience framework that would be the guiding principles of the entire project. And then one key element of experience design or retail design for that matter is the experience blueprint. Ito yung isa sa sinabi ni Adrian kanina na OUE restore sa Downtown Gallery. So unfortunately, this project wasn't that successful from the client side. So they ended up closing after 2 years because of skewed business model. So anyway, but this is one of the key examples of how do you actually design the space, na considering your brand identity, considering your tone of voice, your digital touch points, as well as the packaging. So later on, after completing this blueprint, you would then have the basis to actually, for example, yung spatial design mo, ganyan na yung look and feel. So later on, you have something more tangible to continue from concept design all the way to execution. So ito na yung para mga next phases ng project. So from an experience blueprint, we went all the way down to documentation and ultimately rolling it out and opening the space. I think I'll just walk you through, guys, through several samples of projects that we've worked on before. Of course, everyone is familiar with Globe Telecom. So for who are always at BGC, siya yung parang glass bridge building na nasa gitna ng High Street ba? I'm not sure if High Street yung tawag dun sa gitna niya or something. But it's basically 2 retail stores in between 2 existing buildings, and then connected siya ng glass bridge. So this is one of the format that we ended up designing for Globe. And by doing this format, Globe ended up opening up 2 subsidiaries. So they have now the Globe Live and the Globe Studios. Kasi ang idea ni Globe before was, from a telco company, they want to transform themselves into entertainment, media, and lifestyle company. Kaya nga parang, if I'm not wrong, meron silang mga series, I think, sa Netflix na produce. I think Birdshot is one of them, I can remember. But some of the shows that actually Globe collaborated with other content providers as well. And then aside from the iconic flagship, we also came up with what we call the retail ecosystem. So what is a retail ecosystem? So basically, this is devising an approach or a strategy on future rollout. So it doesn't mean na meron kang space, you would immediately build a flagship on it. So it's about applying the right formats for the right site. And ultimately, you will have scalability, you have ease in rolling out, and then at the same time, pagdating sa client perspective, may magkakaroon silang real estate savings kasi hindi mo kailangang mag-build ng flagship across key areas. Parang depende sa kung ano yung contextual need. Then you could come up with a system that you could easily roll out and scale down if needed.
The other side of the...
And then lastly, for Globe, we've also came up with a design standards manual. So ito yung parang every retail program, these projects would always need to end in what we call the design standards manual. So ito yung kumbaga parang detailed documentation ng mga components niya down to the nail of how you're gonna install your CCTV cameras, ano yung paano mo i-display yung phones in the case of Globe. And then ito na yung parang magiging guide nila on rolling out the future store. So usually if Globe would want to open up a new store and they don't need Ink to be engaged, they would use this as a guide for contractors to do design and build tender. I think next sample would be Shimano. So Shimano actually is not a retail project per se, but it's more like an experience center. So for those who are not cycling, bicycle enthusiasts, Shimano is what do you call this? A bicycle component manufacturer. So hindi sila nagma-manufacture ng bike themselves, but then sila yung gumagawa ng mga derailleurs, ng mga I think even brakes or something. I'm not very familiar. But then they basically own the market. Meron lang silang mga maliliit na competitors, but then basically cycling industry automatically equips with Shimano. So technically hindi nila kailangan ng retail space. So what they want to do is they want to encourage more people to go into cycling. Hence they came up with the idea of the Shimano cycling world. So the idea was, they want to create a space that would encourage people to cycle more, hence making the market bigger. Pag lumaki yung market, therefore lalaki rin yung profit sila kasi nga sila lang din naman yung leader din sa industry eh. So this space is not selling anything except, parang kinoconnect niya lang yung cycling community together. So para siyang cycling clubhouse. So within this space, we came up with different touch points. So for example, we have the cycling installation, yung nasa right side. And then we also have a event space for example, if somebody wants to showcase bicycle repairs, and they could use the space to actually showcase that capability. And then one area of the space also includes a bit of the historical background of cycling. And then at the same time, I think it wasn't shown in this image, key components that Shimano is well known for. Third example would be, I think this would be one of my actually favorite projects at all, because dito ko nakita yung parang paano namin na-apply yung methodology ng spatial communications and behavior design dun sa mismong project. So CPS Chaps, yun yung brand name, para siyang pen shop ng Thailand. But then ang difference was mas nakilala sila sa jeans. So nung in-approach nila kami, so they want to do another flagship that would best represent their brand, being the so-called the rock and roll brand of Thailand. Pero to be honest, parang hindi naman ganon. So anyway, yeah, so going back to the roots of, going back to basics. So we ended up designing a very clean and I would say like honest space with focus on the product. So as you could see, the materiality is only just almost black and white and gray. And then the highlights would always come from the products. And then since their legacy would be about, selling jeans decades ago, we actually created a space that's only catering for that. So as you could see on the leftmost image, meron dito parang glowing box. So basically, yan yung parang, we call that the iconic box eh. So naging part siya ng storefront para ma-drive mo yung customers into the space. And purposely, we opened up the storefront so that there's no barrier, there's no sensors, there's no roller shutters whatsoever. And magiging porous lang yung flow ng customers from the mall corridor going inside the space. And then tinulungan din namin sila when it comes to visual merchandising. And then one key thing that we also work with them would be the brand refresh. So applying the same concept from the physical space, we also design the brand refresh, including how do you use the logos. We need to come up with new typography, hanger design, and even to as small as yung parang label ng mga damit na kung nasa nandun yung price. So parang kasama siya sa concept namin.
Nice.
And then even the tote bag. So they have these seasonal events that they would be giving away tote bags. So even that, we provided them with a template so that everything looks holistic. And then on the people aspect, di ba pag nasa retail store tayo, sino lang makikita mo? Yung store manager, yung cashier, tsaka yung mga nag-aayos ng damit, ang tawag store clerk or something. So for CPS staff, we remodeled their staffing model. So from a manager, we evolved this role to becoming a team leader. And then instead of just having your normal store clerk, we suggested on having a stylist, a store guide, a fit crew, and a style curator. People would have their own roles to play, be it in the store or be it in the HQ. So for example, yung community manager here, she's not in the store, but rather she's the one managing the social media, the campaigns, the marketing ads, and basically everything that has to do with the brand. And then yung stylist, sila yung hindi lang sila yung basta-basta nagbibigay lang ng damit sa'yo pag tinanong mo. Parang tutulungan ka rin to suggest kung ano yung babagay sa'yo na look. Kasi one of the key pillars of CPS shops was, like brand, parang you have the confidence to express yourself. So parang dito nang galing yung idea namin na for you to express yourself, you need someone from the store to actually help you achieve that. And then lastly, on the CPS shops project, we also came up with the ecosystem. However, compared to Globe, medyo mas diversified. Remember, Globe only has all physical stores. For CPS shops, yung retail ecosystem nila involves a mobile interface and a website. there was a proposal before to actually make an app for them, but then unfortunately, hindi kaya ng budget nila yung app design. So for now, they stick up with the website. So how is this relevant? Kasi retail design is evolving. So especially now in COVID-19 pandemic, di ba? Parang one of the biggest hit was the retail industry kasi di ba bawal lumabas yung tao, hindi sila mapunta sa mall. So eventually, mababa yung sales nila. So luckily for CPS Chops, dinala nila yung mismong inventory nila online kasi one of the brief was limited yung space nila, and then they need to come up with a way to actually showcase all their products similar to Xiaomi. So parang naging supporting touch point nila yung digital para to achieve yung sales even though with the pandemic. So well, fortunately Thailand is not really that affected by COVID, but then this is one of the examples of how actually digital could support the physical. Hindi niya kailangang mag-fight kung kailangan mo ng physical space or digital, but then otherwise these formats would need to support each other. And then, oh sorry, I forgot about this. But one key component of a good retail design is the modularity of the components. So if i-roll out mo yung idea mo kasi, it's important na madali siyang gawin. And for most retail programs, you need to come up with a system that they could easily implement. Kasi most of the time, they would just manufacture this in bulks kasi para mas tipid sa manufacturing. And then they would roll it out later on. So kapag madali, kumbaga parang kailangan mo mag-come up ng Lego blocks for you to build the ecosystem. And then depende kung gaano kalaki yung space mo, you could pick and choose kung anong components na kailangan mo dun sa actual site. So parang isa yun sa mga pinakamadaling ways for you to actually achieve a cohesive and standardized retail program sa mga retail design projects. The last example would be Banma. So Banma, unfortunately, this wasn't tawag dito, hindi siya nagawa kasi nung time na nag-conceptualize kami, I think the company went into trouble. So, but then it could have been another CPS Chops that has all the elements of a good experience design implemented in it. But yeah, unfortunately, hindi siya nag-materialize. However, I'm showing this kasi parang similar to CPS Chops. We also managed to design the space, the in-store graphics. They're quite low in terms of digital touchpoints, but then they're quite particular with the in-store graphics and in-store communications. And then at the same time, we also came up with the staff role so that merong human aspect na magsusupport dun sa bagong experience na pinansin namin sa kanya. And I think to conclude the presentation, my boss would always say, better experience creates better business outcomes. Relative to doon sa parang irrational loyalty na if you're providing a good experience to your clients, if you're thinking about what they need and what's relevant to them, it doesn't matter kung ano yung maging feedback ng competitor or whatsoever, mag-aaroon ka ng parang solid following. Therefore, it would lead to better business outcomes and eventually revenue. Yep. I think that's it for my retail design. Any questions? I don't know. Yeah.
Grabe yung depth on how they design. Yung depth from the start until the product itself. Grabe. Ako in-expect ko lang interiors lang, ganun.
Yeah. Actually, yun yung lagi namin sinasabi sa mga nag-join sa amin coming from an architectural background na yes, architecture is one of it, but then there's always more into that. Kaya nga, siguro one reason yung ba't din ako nagtagal sa kanila kasi nga, you keep on learning new things.
Yeah, it is. And we learned a lot tonight.
Nice. Oh, tama yung sinabi ni Tams kanina, May yung depth nung pinasent ni Jenry. Tayo kasi nakikita natin yung end product na di ba? Naalala ko yung first time nakita ko yung globe ni Gentry. Sabi ko, wow, ibang-iba yung approach nila from a normal telco store Kasi experience nga Yung hindi mo kailangan pupunta ako sa globe, saan ako pipila? Parang ganun yung una kong inisip Pero sila, focusing on the experience of the customer, may mag-greet sa'yo sa harapan pa lang. So, ibang-iba yung approach. Kasi sa atin, tama, sinabi ni Jenny as an architect, parang, sige, diretso ko agad sa planning, floor plan, ito yung entry, dito yung ganyan, dito yung ganyan. Pero wala akong masyado napansin or narinig kay Jenny sa presentation niya about that parang focusing really on the experience. Kung hindi ko alam na architectural background si Jenny, baka hindi ko isipin na, di ba? Doon sa presentation. Kasi ibang-iba pala ang approach ng retail. Yan.
Yeah.
Pero yun, grabe, Tamps.
Oh.
Ibang klase yung presentation. Medyo,
Yes.
oo.
Okay, guys, if you have any questions,
just
send
it
them
away.
in.
May nagtatanong dito.
Oh, sino?
Hiring daw ba? Hindi, pero yun. Oo, sige, habang nag-antay tayo ng questions, and Jenry, thank you very much for the presentation. Okay na okay yung pace niya. No? Walang dull moment no, Tams? Parang ganun lang ako sa... Oo. So bago yan, batiin muna natin yung ating 24,000 watchers. Yan. So may mga nagko-comments dito. Yan.
May fan May fan ka ata dito. Yun.
Ha?
Sino?
Si Cedric yan.
Yeah, Cedric is my friend. Hi, kid. Yeah, may kami yan, may side hustles.
Yan. Hustler talaga, oh.
Oh, hustler. Of course, hustling in ESG. Ganyan.
Yan.
So guys, may tanong ba tayo? May tanong. Baka hindi kayo makatulog.
Yan. May napansin lang ako kanina, Jenry. Kasi 'di ba, yung you talk about yung modularity ng design para maging repetitive, pwedeng replicable, easier to replicate. What do your clients say? Kasi like let's say yung pinasan mo kanina, si Shimano sa si Globe, may similarities 'di ba?
Yung
di ba syempre tayo per brand gusto natin medyo na yung bang naiiba sa iba. So, may ba yan? Nagkakaroon ba ng, kamukha lang to nung sa Gentry Si Shimano, hindi iba lang yung wala lang kulay masyado. Pero you can kind of see yung function na sinasabi mo, experience. No? So, ano ba yun? By purpose ba yun? Or...
Yung Shimano, yung Shimano tsaka Globe, I would say it's a mixture of by purpose and at the same time, coincidence din. Kasi nung yung purpose ko kasi pilig sa ganun yun parang, yung kumbaga may naisip niya sa isang project and then the project nag-back out siya dun sa idea na yon or medyo ayaw niya, ipopush yun until ma-implement yun. So buti na lang, hindi niya naiintindihan. But nagkataon yun magkasunod yun. Pero looking at Globe, it makes sense kasi ang sa Shimano kasi it was meant to be fixed. Si Globe is movable. So, meron, if I'm not sure kung nakita niyo siya sa diagram kanina, pero meron kasing element of flexibility yung Globe Store, lalo na yung, I think sa North Edge sa ata. So, ang ideal concept doon was, hindi siya parang ceiling slots lang Yung nakakabit sa kanya, may merong wheels sa taas. Tapos, the idea mo siyang itulak on one side. Kasi during the time, parang gusto nilang gawin yung flagship nila as a smaller version of the Iconic, wherein you could host events, you could do some marketing events or something like that. I'm not sure if Globe was doing it, pero during that time, yun yung isa sa idea nila, gusto nilang flexible yung space. So yun yung key difference ni Shimano and ni Globe, although visually it looks the same, yung methodology kay Globe is slightly different kasi yun yung kailangan nila, flexibility. And during that time, sabi rin ni Globe, ayaw nila ng parang, hindi ko nga alam kung nakita nilang Shimano whatsoever. Pero may specific sila before na parang floating yung gusto nila mangyari. So, yung Shimano in reality, we ended up adding parang bars dun sa ilalim kasi yung bigat ng equipment ni Shimano hindi siya kinakaya ng struts. So yun yung difference ng dalawang project. I think mas may purpose siya kay Globe, to be honest. Though hindi ko sure kung ginamit nila in actual reality. But then conceptually, mas may purpose siya kay Globe. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, agree. I think yung tama yung binanggit mo yung sa North EDSA. Nagbabago nga ng layout yun Depende sa kung ano naka-display. Kung may bagong product, minsan naglagay sila yata doon ng parang NBA. So, hiniwalay
yung
nila
NBA.
iba,
Yeah.
nandun lang siya, ganyan. Tapos minsan yung kailangan nila mas maraming waiting area, parang binabago-bago nga eh. Pero grabe, nung first time nakita ko yung store na yun, ibang-iba yung experience. Sabi ko parang global talaga yung level ng pagka-design eh. Alam mong foreign yung nag-design kasi it wouldn't be, I think, the first instinct pagka kumuha ng local design firm. Diba? More traditional pa rin dito. Retail, may display window, tapos may display table, diba? Ganun eh. Pero ang galing, pati modularity nung display ng devices. Kahit anong device, pwede mo lagay eh. Yung sa slots.
Sa slots, yeah.
Oo, minsan may speaker, may headset, phone, tablet. Ang galing. Eh yung iba, parang specific. May phone holder, tablet holder, may lalagyan na. So, ang galing nung So, siguro, I guess, go ahead.
Yung parang it would have been, I mean, personally, kasi yun yung project din na nagpasok sa akin sa 8 eh. I was hired for Globe. But,
nice.
ironically, not my first, it wasn't my first project. Yung Shimano yung naging first project ko, hindi yung Globe. Pero, yung Globe kasi parang medyo nawalan kami ng control doon pagdating sa visual merge. So, although meron kaming standards, when yung nangyari doon sa mismong application nila, medyo naiba nung visual merchandising team. Siyempre, yung kasing struggle mo kapag malaking organizations, may kanya-kanya siyang team.
I'm sure. Departments na may mga unbending conception about, di ba, whatever they need to do. So yun, siguro talk about that content genre. Di ba, pagpasok mo sa 8 Inc., sabi mo yun ang first project mo, Globe. How did it feel na parang, project sa Pilipinas to di ba?
So, alam mo, sabi ko ba? Sabi ko nga, ang joke ko sa office, sabi ko, wow, may pera silang pambayad ng sana wala nag-vlog dito. Wow, may pera silang pambayad ng store, pero yung internet yung bagal. Even after the project, kasi syempre kung nakilala ko ng mga taga-Globe, so minsan binibiro ko sila, sabi ko, yung internet nyo, bagal pa rin. Ano na? Kaya ba?
Naman. Pero, baka naman, Globe.
Yeah. Pero I mean, I'm not sure if there's anything specific na you want to know about that, but yeah.
No, I guess go ahead, Tams.
But in Globe, did you touch some part of their branding?
Ay, hindi.
Hindi.
Yung brand identity, hindi. Kasi nung nag-refresh na sila nun. I think the brand refresh already happened like I think a year or 2 years before kami nag-start. Though meron kaming scope sa kanila before about Go Magazine. I'm not sure if may Go Magazine pa, pero meron kaming standards na pinroduce sa Go Magazine nila. So using the same brand collateral, sorry, not collaterals, but brand guidelines, kailangan naman siyang i-apply into the Go Magazine. So yung colors, even yung colors ng mga boxes, if I remember correctly, it already came from the brand manual. So syempre medyo wala na kaming control doon kapag na-set up na yung brand.
And how about, for example, sa Philippines kasi medyo mahilig sila sa ganito. Example, Globe. Example, Globe, kunyari binigay, for example lang na kinuha niyo sa scope niyo yung standardization ng branding nila. How are you dealing with if ever they have promos? Like for example, yun nga, sabi niyo, di ba, yung sa isang store, nagkaroon ng NBA, di nasira na yung branding nila nun.
Well, if you're referring to the brand itself, like yung identity, kasi brand guidelines, they would always have a guidebook. So regardless kung anong promos nila, meron yung standard susundin na, for example, meron silang layout template. Yung Globe branding nandito lang, so forth. So very very meticulously detailed yun. So kung meron silang different applications na kailangan ko, for example, NBA, medyo yung visual merch team na yung magde-decide doon. They're following the brand guidelines. Kasi yung brand guidelines would go as detailed as placement of signages eh. Like sa store, hindi pwedeng nasa gitna kasi labag sa brand guidelines, hindi pwedeng nasa gilid kasi ganito ganyan. So ganun ka-detailed yung brand guidelines kapag kasama yun sa scope.
I see. Okay, we have a question here from Cedric. Okay. Cedric's
Cedric.
question, yeah. How will you elevate experience if there's a challenge in retail space? What factor will you prioritize?
So, pag
Challenge
maliit
in
siguro.
Hmm.
Oo. Baka
Pag
pag maliit
maliit-
siguro yung space.
Siguro pag
Pag
maliit
maliit, doon na papasok yung ecosystem mo kasi kaya ang the best way talaga to design the retail store is by looking at it holistically eh. Kumbaga parang for now ang scope kasi okay, for example, merong scope na flagship. Chances are you would encounter a space smaller than a flagship, 'di ba? So, kapag modular yung components mo, then you could scale it down. And doon papasok yung role nung CAD format. Hindi lahat ng flagship should have or hindi lahat ng store should have the same exact touch points. Kung yung touch points na nasa flagship mo is hindi relevant dun sa space, sa maliit na space kasi is either wala dun masyado yung target customers or something, then hindi mo kailangan ng malaking space for that. So doon papasok yung importance ng proper site analysis saka ecosystem planning. Now, dun sa question na kung nandun ba o nandun na, then napapasok yung digital. So kailangan kasi again, ang digital is supposed to to complement, not compete, 'di ba? Kasi in banking perspective kasi everyone's going through digital banking ba 'yon? 'Di ba may pakulo silang yung banking branch, while it could work in Europe kasi I think there's Monzo, there's other digital banks in Europe. Pero sa Pilipinas specifically or maybe Southeast Asia, hindi ubra yung wala kang branch. Kasi first and foremost, Asian people doesn't trust they don't trust people kapag hindi nila nakikita, lalo na kapag pera yung pinag-uusapan, 'di ba? So parang meron pa ring element ng physical and basically building relationship, and you wouldn't have that in a digital unless super millennial ka tulad ni Adrian. So diba? So pero yes, I think in a nutshell, doon na papasok yung iba't ibang ways ng doon na ma-apply ecosystem approach, yung digitalization to complement, not to compete. Yeah.
To complement, not to compete.
Yeah.
And a great experience comes with great business. Something like that. Okay.
Yeah. Better experience creates better business outcomes.
Yeah.
Sabi niya kanina.
Kasi word of mouth na yun. Diba? Hindi mo na kailangan mag-market. Hindi na kailangan mag-advertise eh.
Tama.
Diba?
Tama. Yan. Okay. May question pa ba? May question ako, Jenry. Parang, ang dami mong alam about retail. Ano ba yan? Natutunan mo na with the job or may pinag-aralan ka, ganyan?
Mostly kailangan ginawa yung presentation mo.
Mostly sa natutunan ko lang din on the job. Kasi ako pumasok ako as tawag dito, naalala ko ng interview ko, parang may sinasabi sa akin about behavior modeling. Sabi ko, oo na lang ako kahit di naiintindihan.
Uy, pero mahirap pag-aralan ng behavior modeling.
Oo, actually. Anyway, going back to the question, basically lang yun, parang through projects na lang din. Tapos, yung parang yung strategy mo to one project doesn't necessarily apply to another. Kasi di ba may mga clients tayo na, for example, si Xiaomi, mag-approach sa'yo, sasabihin gusto ko ng Apple store for Xiaomi. But then, the question is an Apple store approach the correct one for Xiaomi? Diba? Kasi visually, yes, maganda siya. But the next question is, does it relate to the outcomes of gusto mo? Does it relate to your brand? If not, then it's just purely a beauty contest. Diba? Para pagandahan lang tayo ng retail. Pero kung hindi siya nagko-connect dun sa mismong brand values mo, then parang parang irrelevant. So anyway, parang I think working through multiple projects na rin na may iba't ibang approach is not the same. Siguro doon na lang din na pick up yung mga kunda ko for today.
Parang tama siya, parang yung example ni Xiaomi, it will always start with the why. No? Parang yung sinasabi mo kanina. So why do this, why do that? Ito ba yung identity mo? Ito ba yung characteristic mo? Ito ba yung personality mo? Hindi yung parang, ang ganda na ito. Pwede bang yan din yung store ko?
Yung gayahin. Tapos yung mga clients, yung tawag dito, digital transformation kasi gusto nila digitally advanced daw. Pero ang gusto nila definition nila ng digitally advanced is may hologram, may ano ba yun, may robot, blah blah blah. Pwede naman. Pero ang haba ng pila mo, ano yun. So, maganda nga yung robot mo pero nagmumura yung kliyente mo kasi haba ng pila. Di ba? Para, kumbaga, solve the basics first bago ka pupunta dun sa mga gimmick stuff. Correct? So,
Tama.
Yeah.
And I guess it's your job, no, as the retail designer to, when clients come to you na may ganung connotation, it's up to you to weed out kung ano talaga yung, bakit ba ganyan yung tingin mo? Ano ba talagang sinasabi mo sa akin? Parang gano'n.
Kasi, again, similarly, designers, guilty ako dito. Yung parang, gravity tayo sa kung ano yung maganda. Pero functional ba? Hindi natin alam. Relevant ba sa target user mo? Even to as simple as a residential project. What might work for me might not work for you guys.
Exactly.
Diba? So, kanya-kanya ano yun, kanya-kanyang, at the end of the day, you should always, again, gravitate sa ano yung outcomes mo na gusto mong ma-achieve doon sa, nung end users mo, basically, clients mo.
Tama. One more thing na nag-stand out sa presentation mo for me, no? Meron ko pinakitang parang diagram eh. Tapos parang sa first part, meron yung discovery, tapos parang... di ba parang pag tinignan mo yung page, almost 2/3, all about research eh, bago siya gumawa ng action eh.
Yep.
Parang gano'n.
Yep.
So, parang does it ano ba, visually represent yung type ng work na ginagawa nyo na before kapag umuhit ng isang linya, puro ka research muna?
Ano yun, basically kasi, yes, that's true in a way na, and minsan nahirapan kami convince yung client ng ganun eh. Kasi, lalo na pag meron silang, for retail, usually may deadline yan. Kasi pag sign up sila ng list, meron silang list free period, di ba? So kapag ganun, usually we would take a lot of convincing na kailangan nyo ng ito, kailangan nyo ng ganyan. Pero ang benefit kasi nun, you know better about the customers and the competitors. Diba? Tsaka hindi naman, it doesn't mean naman na yung discovery actually covers only first two phases. Pagdating mo dun sa definition, you're already defining kung anong maging experience mo dun sa apat na realms. Nandun na yung environments, communications, products, services, and behaviors. Only that it's high level. Hindi pa siya well-defined, hindi pa siya fleshed out. Now, after kapag may approval na yung master plan mo, yung pinaka-blueprint mo kung anong strategy mo to implement para ma-roll the store, then doon na tayo magsisimula to go down into the details. So possibly may changes, but again, you would always get back to the framework, to the master plan.
Still going back to the why and the how. Tapos yun, sa what, sa tactics mo. Yan, ako, Jenry, umiinit ang usapan. Tumadami yung question dito sa ating, sa ating socials. Yan, Tamps. May question si Architect
Melvin. Okay. Question is Sir Melvin. With the popularity of online shopping, can retail design still adapt or innovate further to catch up and make people visit more brick and mortar stores, physical stores?
Yes, definitely. Kasi di ba, again, tulad nga dun sa sinabi ko earlier, yung digitalization should complement, not compete. Ang struggle kasi ng retail brands, kailangan nila yung store to sell products, di ba? But then, it's a valid point, no, na usually tayo digitalization parang you would move on to purchase more and more online. Shopee, alam mo yan, Shopee, Lazada, blah. Or if the brand itself has its own app, then it's the job of the experienced designers like us to actually come up with an idea. How do you repurpose the space? Is it an experience center? Is it something that would just purely represent the brand but not necessarily sell things? Or should it complement, katulad nung sa CPS? Yung sa CPS kasi, while they are still building flagships, but then at the same time, they're slowly moving into digital. Ang suggestion kasi namin sa CPS shops before, for example, if hindi mo ma-display lahat ng products mo in the store, then you have the digital touchpoints to actually cater for that. If wala yung stock mo na certain store, you don't even need to go down to the store to check it out. You could check it through the app. And then, if you know for a fact na you'll be visiting the store, you could arrange for an appointment to fit kung ano man yung gusto mong sukatin. So basically, it's about coming up with ways on how you would complement. Kasi again, ang danger nga kasi is parang ang notion is lagi nating pinaglalaban yung dalawa eh. Pero there's always a way for it to be complementing. But yes, digitalization definitely would improve the overall experience. Lalo na yung kapag yung mga transactions na, for example, specifically sa financial institutions, yung mga transactions hindi naman kailangan na ipunta mo pa sa bangko. I-up mo na lang, maganda makisaw-saw doon, di ba? So, diba? sorry.
Chicks and teller eh.
Di ba? So, medyo triggered si App pag gano'n, di ba? So, I mean, syempre, you're complementing it, therefore, you're freeing up the physical space. And kung meron mang gustong i-promote si brand as another activation or another ways to engage a customer, then they could really do it in the retail space as well. So it's about repurposing and finding new ways. How do you fit the physical format in the entire ecosystem of things?
Tama. So as kunyari sa atin, tayo talaga architects physical space. So it goes beyond. 'Di ba? Parang kailangan matuto rin tayo sa kung paano natin sasama sa ecosystem si mobile. Hindi lang yung nag-mobile ka tapos yung retail store gamitin mo lang para isoli yung hindi nagkasya na binili mo online. Kasi ginagawa lang di ba? So more of complementing. Tama naman. Yan.
Saka meron kasing digitalization na parang afterthought na yung digital.
Oo.
Marami nun.
Totoo. And I think right now, if
naka-hook up lang sa Shopee, sa Lazada, ganyan.
Tama. Yung iba ganun, no? Doon na may store na lang sila doon.
Afterthought na lang. Pero yung meaning, yung afterthought na mismo doon sa entire experience. Kasi at the end of the day, you always need to refer back to anong experience na gusto mo.
Tama.
Paano siya ma-enable ng digital and physical or both. Diba?
Agree. I think one prevalent example ngayon, 'di ba, yung parang appointments online, yung hindi ka pupunta doon para pumila. Pupunta ka doon pag oras mo na. So parang name-marry mo ni mobile, hindi ka pupunta doon na pipila pa ako. Hindi, mobile muna, tapos pagpunta ko doon, oras ko na. In a way, it's a better experience kasi hindi ka nag-aantay eh. 'Di ba?
Yeah. Saka even doon sa I'm not sure if you guys si Adrian familiar ka sa Wiga, 'di ba? Wiga.
Sa?
Wiga ba yun?
Yan? Slide left, slide right ba yan?
Hindi. Wala yung kinalaman. Ano yun? Para siyang retail sa FB. Para siyang cheaper Muji. Hindi mo makakabili ng product sa kanila nang wala kang account sa app. Tapos,
maraming ganun dito.
Oh, wow.
Tapos ilalagay mo na sa shopping cart mo doon sa mismong app and then you would just go to the store to pick it up.
Diba? Wala pa yata ganyan dito. Nice. O yun, no? Parang tying talaga. Iba na talaga yung approach. Hindi lang titignan mo yung spaces. Ito. Iba na. Experience talaga. Okay. May ano pa tayo bang question pa, Jenry? So medyo bilisan ko ng konti. Ito, galing kay Architect Mikey.
Since your firm is not based here, can you tell us more about the challenges on the other stages like work in drawing production, tendering process, construction management and supervision, and QA/QC? Diba last time, ganyan rin nangyari sa last time, diba? When you are doing the Bangkok project, nakikita ko sa stories mo yun eh.
Ay, nakakagigil.
Naabangan yung stories, oh.
Hindi. Yung sa specific question ni Architect Michael, basically, parang pumapasok kami as consultant. Parang, design consultant ba? And then you have the architect of record. And then you have... Sorry, medyo rusty na ako dun eh. So, pumapasok kami as design consultant. So, usually, si client, for example, si Globe, ang AOR nila for Iconic was Casas plus Architects. So, sila yung AOR namin. Tapos, sila rin yung nagko-coordinate sa amin about any design revisions. But nonetheless, we gave them our construction documentation. Pero syempre, having specific laws and regulations sa Manila, they need to adjust it based on the local codes. And then even sa structural engineers, ang engineer ng Iconic was si EOC, yung engineer ng yung Apple Store sa Marina Bay Sands, yung dome.
Wow.
Hindi nung bridge na yun, si Erkers Ocalahan, sila rin. So the same way, may representative din sila. I think it was C-Square. Sorry if I'm advertising companies here, but si C-Square structural engineer sila before. So parang ganun din. And then, yung local architect, yung magre-report sa amin ng progress on site. And then occasionally, meron kaming phase, we call it construction administration. So instead of us being on site every day, we would periodically come in, for example, sa key milestones ng construction. Usually ako, tapos yung, for Globe specifically, ako, tapos yung that time I have someone above me, like a principal. And then yung CEO ko, usually pupunta kami on site to coordinate with CASAs. Then we would check everything on site. Tsaka medyo okay na rin nga rin kasi nga syempre may mga Zoom na, may mga
Tama.
Pwede mag-digital markup. But nonetheless, on site, yes, we engage local architects then. So yung mga gustong pag nag-project kami sa Pilipinas, baka may gusto mag-AOR.
Architect of record. Architect of record.
Kaya, question ko yan.
Sorry, nasa office pa ako. Sensya na kayo. Ayan. Sige, next question si Eloise.
Okay, next question. I think this can be the last question. Okay?
Okay,
So,
yeah.
kung may question pa kayong iba, follow nyo na lang siya over Instagram or whatever.
Anong app pa?
Instagram. Okay, from Eloise. Can you share how the pandemic affected your design considerations in retail or commercial space or current projects, if there's any? In the pandemic, are there new trends or approaches in retail design? So how is your R&D sa office?
Okay, yung sa retail design, even before pandemic, yun, pinupush talaga yung mixture ng digital and physical. So we call that mono-channel. Kasi before, omni-channel ang tawag nila. Omni-channel is you need to choose between digital or physical. Yeah. But however now, meron natin tinatawag na omni-channel. So again, similarly dun sa comment ko earlier about banking, yung mga transactions na pwede mo namang gawin online, ina-advise namin talaga na i-push sila on a digital. Kaya super profitable ang digital development nowadays. Okay? And then, project specific sa Pilipinas. Meron kami existing client right now sa Pinas. Isa yan sa concerns nila. COVID-19 kasi ni-hold yung project for 3 months because of COVID din. So, isa sa mga proposals namin before was, kasi may nagsasabi ko na yung head ng digital, so talagang wag na ituloy yung branch. Pero syempre kami, kailangan namin i-push yung branch kasi una yung scope namin. Pero kailangan parang ang rational was kailangan namin siyang i-approach architecturally. So for example, even as simple as providing ample space around clusters, that would promote social distancing. And at the same time, di ba dito kapag yung mag-ano ng social distancing, kumbaga meron siyang architectural solutions na you could implement para ma-promote mo yung health and hygiene strategies mo. I think one classic example was yung sa queuing. So instead na maglagay ka ng sticker or lines na afterthought, why not just do a floor material na would demarcate the lines where you're supposed to be queuing, di ba? Or maybe use some gobo lights or a spotlight that would indicate kung saan ka dapat tatayo. Or even in terms of materiality, ano yung mga materials natin na would not encourage the propagation of viruses and bacteria, di ba? So may mga ganung solution, but that's on the physical what do you call it, on a physical space. However, in a more strategic way, we would always encourage digital and physical. If possible, go digital kung kaya talaga ng organization nyo.
Okay. Yun na talaga yung trend going to digital apps. Yun na,
it should complement your brick and mortar na store.
Yes.
Actually, dapat talaga.
So, I guess solve tayo for tonight.
Grabe, Jenny. We are honored to have you in this bi-weekly show. I hope makita ka namin ulit sa invite ni Tams. Sa October, baka hindi namang retail spaces pakita sa atin ni Jenny. Tams, puro digital na.
Wala nang retail. Wala nang
retail. Oo.
Pero maganda yun kasi going digital, it means we're in the industry 4.0. Magandang model yon na i-discuss nila, I mean, through sa audience natin. Di ba? May graphics ka na nga, may digital transformation ka pa, ganun. Ayun. So,
Marami
thank
tayong
you,
aralin.
Architect Jenry Umali. Maraming salamat. We
Yes,
will
sir.
keep you first. Yeah. Magchikahan pa tayo for a while after namin i-close ang show. And
Nako, tara naman si Tams, oh. Naghahang na naman. Sabi na, sa Singalong lang to. Wala to, Singapore.
Hello, okay na.
Yan. Ayan, tama.
Okay,
Yun, so
okay,
yung sinasabi Tams.
Hello.
Yan. Hello?
Yun,
Paramdam ka, Tams.
Maraming salamat, Architect Jenry. We will
Lagi ka muna namin sa backstage, Jenry, talk to you in a bit, no? I-close na natin show. Pero thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jenry.
Thank
you. Ayan,
nakalagpas tayo ng 1 oras.
Oo nga, wala eh. Pag napapasarap talaga yung kwentuhan, maganda yung topic eh. Iba yung iba yung information
iba yung tama.
Iba yung nakainom na ako pero na-absorb ko pa rin eh. Ganun pala yun, parang
sabi.
Oo, diba? Hindi ko in-expect na medyo detailed yung pe-present ni Jenry. No?
Yeah. Me too, hindi ko in-expect yun. So, ayun na nga, we would like to thank our sponsors for bringing this episodes possible. Boysen, the #1 paint, and of course,
Crown
our
Pipes.
#1 pipes. Yan.
Yes.
Ano bang meron sa next episode natin? Ako ba uli yun?
Okay, yung next episode natin,
To follow.
Surprise.
Okay, surprise. Kasi nagpe-prepare pa kami, guys. Pero expect nyo, sooner meron ulit tayong international speaker.
Yeah.
May international speaker ulit tayo. Problema lang natin time zone. Time zone ang problema natin.
Para sa ating international host, meron tayong international speaker.
Yes. Okay, guys, I think that's it. This is Adrian Tampolino. It is an honor to bring you home the world. Wow. reporter. Wow.
Reporting live from
Singapore. Yan.
And this is your VP, Archie Tolentino. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, good
After
to see you guys
a long hiatus. So, expect nyo na natutuloy-tuloy na ulit ating show. So, tell everybody, tell your friends, give us feedback kung ano yung gusto nyo makita, give us feedback kung okay ba yung format na ganito. 1 hour lang sana. Kasi minsan lumalapas talaga. Pero minsan napasap talaga ng usap.
And sa mga nag-register sa Area A Assembly yun, di ba? Register, hindi ko alam. Area A Assembly, attend kayo bukas, day 2. Bukas ako a-attend. And then ano pa ba? Ano pa bang announcement? Yun lang.
Tapos may mga nanonood dyan na induction. May induction tayo.
Yeah, sa mga nanonood na new members, like bagong pasa, or bagong
lipat na chapter.
Soon we will give you a news regarding your oath taking.
Yes.
Induction. Induction to the chapter.
Induction ceremonies. Yes. To welcome you to the South Triangle chapter. At syempre, of course, cheers din. Diba?
Cheers.
Yan. Cheers.
Wala.
Ngayon. Okay lang yan. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for sharing us your Friday night. This has been your VP, Archie Tolentino.
If you like this episode, please. If you like this episode, you can play it on replay over YouTube and of course over Facebook then. And of course, our past episodes are also in YouTube. And follow us all over social media at UAPSTC. Again, this is Adrian Tampolino.
Final na, totoo na to, Archie Tolentino.
Totoo na. Sige, bye-bye.
Bye.